Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our full council today, Tuesday, the 16th of December. The first item on our agenda is declarations of interest. Do I have any, please? Councillor Nixon.
Yeah, I have a pecuniary interest in item number 14, both as a parent whose son was part funded by the 2024-25 grant and with a child who will be going on to college visits next year.
Thank you. Item 2 on our agenda are minutes of our previous meeting. Are there any issues around those minutes, please? Therefore, could I have a proposer, Councillor Mumford, and a seconder for their adoption, please? Seconder, Councillor White, thank you. All those in favour? It's carried, thank you very much. Item 3 are Chairman's announcements. I would just like to mention today to pass on my condolences and those of members to Councillor John Peacock, whose father David's funeral is taking place on St Agnes this morning. So we send him our sincere condolences. As we are about to celebrate Christmas, I would just like to, from the chair, thank all our members of staff for their very hard work during this last year, and indeed members, the work that they have put in. It's not easy running this council, as you all well know, and we're very grateful for all the work that everybody does. And I want to take the opportunity to wish you all a very happy Christmas and a happy and healthy and prosperous new year. Thank you. Item 4 on our agenda are considerations of any questions received under Standing Order 14. We did have a question that was received late, but also our paper was late. Therefore, I'm exercising my discretion to accept the question. So, would you like to read your question, please? Thank you.
Last year, following a meeting with the then interim Director of Children's Services, it was agreed that the most straightforward and fair way to redistribute the residual post-16 funding for 23-24, I think that should be 24-25, should it? Would be, 23-24 would be to share it equally across families. This approach was taken because many families had not retained receipts for costs incurred beyond the grant allocation. It was also agreed that families would be asked to record their full accommodation and travel costs going forward so that true costs could be established and further discussion could take place about how any residual funding should be used in future years. While we recognise that a hardship fund is needed for some families, hardship funding should not be created from a grant intended for accommodation and travel at a time when many families from the 24-25 cohort remain significantly out of pocket. The report references reasons for underspend, but does not acknowledge that many families did not choose alternative accommodation options because these were financially unattainable, leaving them with no realistic choice. No further consultation with affected families has taken place, yet decisions about the use of residual funding now appear to have been made by council officers alone. Where daily travel is not possible, education law places responsibility on the local authority to provide or fund suitable accommodation. In light of Ofsted's findings that the council has limited assurance over children's safety, there are ongoing questions about whether the current arrangements meet the legal test of suitability. My question, therefore, is, can the council explain why the decision to redirect residual 24-25 post-16 funding has been made without further consultation with families whose children were in post-16 education during that time, particularly given the earlier agreement to review actual costs and revisit how that funding should be distributed?
Thank you. Could I call upon Sue, please, our Director of Children's Services? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The decision to redistribute residual funding available was taken in under my understanding that it was seen as the only mechanism to distribute funds at the time to families for the benefit of post-16 accommodation in the time available in order to avoid losing those funds from the DFE. It was not, as I understand it, determined that this would set a precedent for future years if any residual funds were available. Paper 14 in today's agenda explains why our recommendation to Council today is to use the alternative approach to the redistribution of residual funds, and I'm happy to discuss that under the detailed paper before you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Did you want a supplementary question? No. Okay, thank you. Item 5 on our agenda are considerations of any motions received in accordance with Standing Order 12. I have none. Item 6 is to receive draft minutes for information only. Item 7, urgent items. I should have mentioned earlier with my Christmas greetings that I wished all our community a very happy Christmas and a happy and prosperous and healthy new year from all our staff and members of the council, and I did not do so, so that is an urgent matter. Thank you. Item 8 on our agenda is first of our part 1 agenda items, which is our financial performance report, second quarter, in the hands of our Chief Executive, Russell. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Report today is for the second quarter financial performance, that is to the end of September 2025. I'm going to cover 2 key areas today. I'm not going to go through the report in more depth as I normally do, because I think we need to focus on 2 specific items today. You will see in paragraph 2, the situation now is the council's forecast position at year end is an overspend now of about £850,000. This is obviously a significant overspend. It's not affordable for the council to have a level of overspend of this size, and we do need to take urgent action, and we do need to realise the seriousness of the situation. In terms of what is driving the overspend, you'll see set out there in your report that £780,000 of the overspend is due down to adult services, and there's a breakdown included in the report. Significant element, over 50% of it, is down to increase in staffing costs because ultimately we are staffing the care home at Park House with a significant number of agency staff, which are extremely expensive. In addition, they come with the need to accommodate them on the island as they're not residents of the island. So that is driving up the cost of running the care home significantly. We're also seeing an increase in external care arrangements, more expensive and complex packages and more of them. And we do need to do a piece of work, and I'll get to that in a minute. And our income is down compared with previous years and against the budget as well. Quite a significant reduction if you compare it with the income levels that we had a couple of years ago. And some of that is down to the level of self-funders that are receiving care, but again, I'll cover that in a minute in more detail. So predominantly, the issue that we have is that if we overspend by £800,000 or £900,000, how do we fund that? We have just about sufficient reserves to fund it at the moment, but we have not sufficient reserves to fund that for a second year. So that we are beginning to teeter on the verge of whether we are financially sustainable going forward. And if we cannot get this level of spend down within the budget envelope by the 1st of April at the very latest, so that we start the new year spending within our means, then we are going to have a significant difficult year next year, and we may have to make some very, very hard decisions about other services. hopefully we can address the issue with the adult social care to protect those other services. But at the moment, I have to say is that having raised the issue of agency staff now in the last 3 or 4 reports, we still don't seem to be able to get a solution to reducing those staff. So at the moment there is action plan being developed and being implemented by the director and the team. Primarily we're looking at how do we reduce agency staff. We are in discussions with our health colleagues who have had a very successful recruitment exercise earlier in the year, and is there something there that we can actually draw on some of those staff, and we have potentially an outline plan that we may be able to draw down some health staff, which will reduce our need for agency staff. We will also be looking at how do we recruit people that live on island to come and work in the care home, looking at what package needs to be developed to be able to get the interest needed so that people want to work for the council with the care home. So that's a piece of work that's urgently being looked at the moment. We are in the process of reducing our reliance on interims through a recruitment process at the moment. So that will help take some of the pressure off going forward. But those people need, those recruitments need to be successful, and the people do need to turn up at the point when we require them, which it seems to be a struggle at the moment to actually get that recruitment finalised. The other couple of areas that need looking at is having, the service of having had a look at some of the packages of care that are in place at the moment. There is and particularly around the level of income. There's a piece of work that needs to be done to revisit the financial assessments and certainly compare those with both the care plan, and not just the care plan, but the actual care as well that's going in. So there's a piece of work about triangulating all that the care being received is the care that's in the care plan, and that is also in the financial assessments. At the moment, having looked at some of those, the director in that area, there does seem to be a gap between those. Therefore, we don't seem to be looking at ensuring that people are paying for the full care when they should be paying for the full care, or whether health, if they are in a continuing health situation, our health services are paying for that. We've certainly, in the last 12 months, seen a significant uplift in the level of care that we're providing. It is far more complex than we have done in the last 2 or 3 years. So that does question whether we do need to be talking with health colleagues, whether we are stepping in and replacing health responsibilities. So that piece of work needs to be ongoing rather rapidly. We have been discussing with the LGA whether some extra support around financial assessments, because they are quite complex in a specialist area. They're not necessarily something that a standard social worker can do. And it's also brings a social worker into a little bit of a sort of difficult position about the level of care that they're saying, and then asking the person to pay at the same time. We do need to look at our charges. Everything we say about the islands about being higher cost than the mainland, and yet we've got the lowest fees in the country. So there seems to be a disparity there, that it must be costing us. They don't seem to be set at the right level going forward. So we need to look at that. That will help generate more income, as long as we have people paying fees, and again, those fees will be used as a basis for any contribution from health. So there's a lot of work underway at the moment. It needs to be done urgently. This has the knock-on effect of not only putting us in a serious financial position this year, but without a credible plan in place to bring the spend down by the 1st of April, there is a significant risk of whether we can set a balanced budget next year, which we have to do legally. So in terms of bringing a balanced budget to the February full council, for me to be able to do that and have assurance, I need assurance from the service that our adult spend levels have come back down to a level that we can afford going forwards. So that's a fairly serious position. Obviously, if we cannot reduce expenditure for whatever reason and it is uncontrollable, we are not in a position to set a balanced budget, then we are into the position of having to approach government through various means to try and get special financial assistance, or we go further than that and we have to issue Section 114 notice, which basically prohibits all new expenditure and is quite a draconian place to be. Very few councils ever recover from that without serious consequences on services. So it is a very, very serious position. We have been flagging it in both the budget and previous outturn reports that we really need to get the adult spend down. We haven't. We've used reserves to fund it. We are in a position where we can't continue. We're very fast running out of road, so as to speak, on that. And in fact, rather than reducing it this year, we've almost doubled the number of agency staff in the care home to ensure that it's run on a safe basis. So quite a serious issue for members there. The other issue I bring your attention to today, and it's again, one of the recommendations is based upon it. In the last 6 to 12 months, again, over a period of time, the level of housing rent arrears has gone up quite considerably. It's now a significant number, and we do need to do a piece of work. Well, I've said it needs to be analysed and investigated. The last two financial reports, we've yet to see any real change in the direction of travel on that, and I'm now raising it as a more serious issue that we really do need to find out what is actually happening in terms of collecting our council tax rent, because at the moment we are not collecting it all by a significant level. Our target is to collect 95%. You're always aware that there is not everyone's going to pay. People will have financial difficulties, but we're down closer to 80% at the moment, and obviously that is not sustainable going forward either. So those two levels are bringing the council into a perilous financial situation. We are trying to look at how we set next year's budget, but with those sorts of issues hanging over us, and with the budget pressures that we have for next year. Just remember we do have budget pressures for next year. Things will happen. Inflation will happen. That will drive costs up. Some of our contracts are going up as well. And with pressures like this, it's going to be a challenging time, as I said, to try and draw a balanced budget going forward. And we do need to take serious action going forward from today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Nixon, please.
Thank you to the Chief Executive and to the Deputy 151 Officer for that thorough report. It is a bleak picture. It's a stark reminder of how our geography and limited housing supply impacts on our bottom line across the services. Clearly, as outlined in the report, the key area that needs to be resolved is the care home staffing costs. It should be noted, however, that the desire to reduce the reliance on agency staff is in no way a reflection on those agency staff who have and are working at Park House at present, but the on-costs of relying on agency staff are clearly unsustainable, and we definitely need to review all income and expenditure of the care home to keep it sustainable. The action plan is definitely something we need immediately, and I would like to propose that that action plan is implemented as soon as possible, but also that we get an update on that plan in each and every full council going forward. As noted in the report, adult social care is the biggest area of overspend, but there are a number of other areas of income and expenditure that we need to tighten up to get a better handle and to balance the budget and remain sustainable. I would like to propose all 4 of the proposed recommendations in the report.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mumford, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say I agree with everything that Russell has said, but I'd like to stress to adult social care that I think it's very important that we work with CFT to try and sort some of the staffing out. I believe they are very willing to help, which would bring the agency staff down a bit if we use some of their healthcare staff. Yes, it's all a bit doom and gloom, but I have every faith in the adult social care team to try and make as many cuts as possible. I'm very sorry that we all had an email last night saying that the person that we offered the job to for a permanent adult and children's director is not going to take the job, which is a bit of a shame because we all thought that he would be very good. So we're back to the drawing board, and I think we'll be having more interviews in the new year. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Section 151 Officer, for the report. I have 3 questions regarding other matters on the report, if I can. Firstly, is it usual to have penalty clauses? Sorry, it's usual to have penalty clauses with a building contract, although a certain amount of slippage for agreed extras would be permissible. Does the museum contract contain penalty clauses? Yes or no?
Yes.
Thank you. What is the actual total cost of the museum to the council, revenue only, expected to be?
Are you talking ongoing revenue after the build is finished?
Sorry, what did you say?
Are you talking ongoing revenue costs to run the facility once it's built? Because at the moment it's a capital expenditure as
No,
we're
just
building.
the build, sorry, the build cost.
The build cost, the capital build cost.
The officer time's been is included within the capital project, so the project manager costs are included within the capital works. So there's no revenue costs for, I won't mention members of staff, but staff working on the project are accommodated within the capital costs of the project, not revenue.
Can I ask, so what is the capital cost to the council?
I think the figures are in your table on page 27. Or is it in the actual text?
And is that expected to be the total? There's no more expected to be?
That's the
added to
current
that.
agreed contract price, yes.
Thank you. And my last question, on payments to suppliers, it shows a very poor performance on payments. This affects local businesses who are often sole traders. I understand this is an outsourced service. What can be done to improve this to help our island businesses?
Yeah, I'll come in and answer that one. The service, the issue that we have is not, excuse me, is not to do with the outsourced service. The outsourced service is just about making the final payment. The issue that we have at the moment is the timeliness of purchase orders being raised by the council managers and staff, the budget holders. They're not, if you don't have a purchase order when an invoice comes in, because what we have is an automated system. So if you have a purchase order to the supplier, they then invoice against the order. If it matches, electronically payment is made, no human intervention, and it's very slick, very quick. What happens is if the invoice comes in and there's no order and it can't match, it then has to go around the process of getting the service to raise the purchase order. They're raising it therefore after the invoice has been received, and you know, instead of having an order before, you're having it after. Therefore, it's almost impossible to get the payment done within 14 days. We are, however, not so bad when you compare it with the, doing it over 30 days. But if you're not raising those orders in advance, when you actually raise the request for the work, you won't be able to meet the payment deadlines, and that is the issue. So it's less about the outsourced service, because that's the back end. That's actually just making the payment and accounting for it. The front end is the people on the island who have to get into the culture of raising orders at the outset.
Lovely, thank you.
Councillor Sims, please.
Yes, good morning. On page 22, summary of overspends, there's the staffing costs, accommodation, blah, blah. And then it's got income. I'm just confused about this. Income's, I don't quite work out how income is an overspend. I'm sure it's an accountancy thing, but could you explain, please?
It's a shortage in the income that we budgeted for. So we budgeted for a certain level of income. We have less income coming in actually. Therefore, that creates a net overspend on the bottom line because we've got less revenue coming in than we require to balance the budget.
So it's essentially it's a deficit compared to expected. And the other question I've got is on 25, the airport data. I'm looking at forecast and actual. Again, it's the forecast seems to be 30% above actual, and this happens continually year on year, and and the airport's not doing particularly well in any case. But can we consistently get the budget forecast is much greater than the income, and I just think that at some point we need to drill this down and basically sort it out, because it's been going on ever since I got on the council, and I imagine it was going on long before that as well. Thank you.
I'll just respond to that one. In terms of the actual airport, I think the numbers you probably quoted are correct, but actually we're doing better than we anticipated at the airport this year by 30,000. There still is the issue of the budgeted deficit contribution to the airport, which we will need to address as we go through the budget process going forward. But actually this year our passenger numbers are holding up, they're just marginally down, but our number of movements are online is slightly up, freight is up, freight would have been up as well over the weekend, and our general aviation movements are also up. So overall the airport, for the first time for a couple of years, is online with the budget, but that doesn't mean to say that's a good position, but we're not actually having an in-year overspend for the airport, but we still have the inbuilt deficit that we are funding.
So essentially, the airport's not necessarily buoyant, but it's sinking slower than I suggested.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Marcus, please.
Thank you. Yeah, pretty bleak picture in terms of adult services. Just noticed that we've got a savings in the savings section on page 26. We already had an £86,000 uplift of adult social care fees. Has that been included in this year's overspend?
Yes, because the savings the savings was a theoretical figure calculated on the basis that when you set the fees and charges in February, there was a significant uplift to the fees and charges because there was an error, I think, in 2020, that the wrong base had been used and then carried forward for a couple of years. We increased that significantly in earlier this year in February 25. If the level of income, so it gets a bit complicated for people who don't understand some of the differences between variances. So the action happened, we've taken that action. If the level of activity was in place, we would have received that uplift in income. So if our level of charges for this year was comparable with last year, they'd have actually been higher because of the uplift in income. What the issue is that it's not down to the price, it's down to the volume, and we're not charging out as many hours of care to self-funders as we have done in previous years. Now that's the piece of work we need to look at, because there's a question mark in Director's review that she's initially carried out, that whether we are have done the financial assessments and whether the packages also that are agreed at the outset actually reflect the actual care going in. So our variance is due to volume. The saving we got in the savings plan was delivered because we did increase the price.
Right, okay, so it's, I mean, that sounds non-binary. It's like, it's not actually 86,000 pounds of cash that we're saving, we're projecting those savings. Okay, so, so I would say that when we look at fees and when we compare our fees with other care homes on the mainland, that we're not a profit-making organisation, whereas probably other care homes are, so we have to make sure that we're not raising fees too much, which is one of the issues that we've got. In terms of what Councillor Nixon said about monitoring the savings plan, how is that going to happen? Because we have these quarterly reports every quarter. We can't just sit here and go, we trust you to do it. We need to be shown that you're doing it.
I think Councillor Nixon's recommendation is great to bring it back to each full council meeting. I would suggest you also get more up-to-date information from officers and through Councillor Nixon in between meetings as well, informally, to ensure you, because I think it's that serious that you do need to be kept informed as we go on a regular basis. I will be monitoring it with the director and the rest of the senior leadership team very regularly, and we can say I can feed that into the lead member, Councillor Nixon, and he can ensure that you are updated, and then every month we'll bring a report to full council.
Okay, cool. Can we also do that maybe, because just with the housing rents, I'm sure that's a bit more of a sensitive issue, so I think we need updates on that, but probably through Councillor Dean, but probably we don't want to be getting bailiffs in straight away, so if we can do that as well, please.
Thank you very much. Vice Chair, please.
Yeah, I think it's just worth saying we've had various workshops outside this session, so the severity of the situation is not lost on any members, and we were able to explore some of the potential options for moving forward in that forum. But my question was to do with the capital funding. We're approving Access for All grant funding, but it doesn't say in the report what that is or what it's aiming to achieve. So I think I understand what the FIPL grant funding is. I've got background on that one, but what are we going to be doing with the Access for All grant funding?
I don't know off the top of my head. I think it's related to children's services. I can get back and give you a note on that, Councillor.
Thank you. Councillor Dean, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's disappointing to be in this position with adult social care. It's something we've talked about for probably as long as I've been a councillor, the use of agency staff and the lack of recruitment to the care home. When the action plan is being written, can I ask that members are included in the discussions for that? Because we're the ones on the ground, if you like, that talk to people in the street, that might be able to inform the conversation to enable people to be recruited to the care home. I know there are several private carers that work in the community, and I'm sure we could use our persuasive powers to get them to come to the care home if we knew what their, we might know what their needs are or what their requirements are. So I'd ask that we could be involved in the formulating of the action plan. The other thing I wanted to highlight was, which hasn't been mentioned yet, is the overspend on waste and recycling. I wondered if you could expand on that, please.
Yeah, before I do the waste, just come back to Councillor Williams. I've just been notified that the Access for All is National Landscape Grant funding. Okay, so close that one off for you. In terms of the waste overspend, there are a number of reasons for that. Predominantly spread over 3 or 4 headings. One of them, just trying to recall what they are off the top of my head, that the increase in cost of managing the waste on the off-islands has gone up by about £40,000. The increase in freight charges for waste between the islands to St Mary's has gone up by about £40,000. You'll see that these come in lumps of 40s, just always the way when we're doing things. There's another increase, a significant increase, I think of 50 to 60,000 due to the delay in changing our arrangements for disposal of waste on the mainland, because obviously we ship our waste to the mainland. We have an agreement, or we've reached an agreement with Cornwall Council to use their facilities, so that their energy recovery centre at St Dennis. But at the moment, there are some issues with that being offline and some delays in us getting that in place. I think those are probably the three big numbers there that are going forward. About half, just under half of that 190 is one-off. So there is elements going forward that look like they're recurring. We are building that into the budget going forward. The one that we're still in discussion with is some of the increased cost of running the waste on the off-islands, because significantly there's been an increase, but I think there's some work to look to see whether that can be reduced, particularly on one island. So, I mean, Rebecca is here and can give you far more detail than I can, but yeah, it is a problem. If it was our only problem, we could probably deal with it within our total resources. But obviously, it further compounds our position when we've got such a serious position in adults.
Thank you. Councillor White, please.
Thank you, Chair. As other members have noted, this is a rather scary position to be in. And I'd like to echo Councillor Nixon's sentiment that the action plan around adult services come into place sort of with immediate effect as quickly as possible, with that regular monitoring, and Councillor Dean's request that members are involved in that action plan. On the late payments to suppliers and contractors, can I suggest a change in working practices, perhaps, where purchase orders are raised when suppliers are contracted, so that they're ready to go, as opposed to this kind of loop where they're coming in late and then it's causing issues.
I'll just comment, that is the regulated process.
That is as it should be, but
That
we're not.
is how it should be done.
Okay,
So we need
to
not
work on
actually
that.
happening. So as you're seeing the figures, you see that, you know, the situation recovers itself within the 30-day terms, but it struggles with, obviously, once you're not doing that, there's no way you're going to get a payment out within 14 days, because the invoice is probably 2 days gone before we receive it.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So we need to definitely tighten up on that. And with regards to off-island waste, I know it's a perennial issue on St Martin's, and I imagine the other off-islands, just the logistics sometimes of getting waste away, including larger waste and scrap. And in fact, in recent years, it's only when the Duchy has put in a landing craft that we've been able to get away some of the larger waste and scrap elements. So I think we need to have a look at sort of the structure and the logistics as well. And perhaps more on-island recycling. Maybe we can do some food waste recycling on the off-islands to bring down the weight of what we're transporting across. There's things that we can do, and I know we'd all like to work on that together.
I mean, I think there's further reports probably on that subject about recycling, in particular food waste, which will be coming forward. There are studies being done, and yes, food waste is one of our most expensive elements of the waste stream that we have to deal with, and we are looking with partners, particularly Community Venture Company, whether there are better ways of dealing with it, and we'll obviously be further reports on that as we go through that process.
Thank you. Councillor Mumford, please.
I think Councillor Nixon proposed all the recommendations. I'd just like to second those.
Thank you very much. So we have a proposal and seconder for the recommendations. All those in favour, please. That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for the report. Item 9 on our agenda is the Council Performance Summary and Corporate Risk Register for Q2 as well, also in the hands of our Chief Executive. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Again, along with the finance report, we're bringing you today the Q2 non-financial performance and the risk register. First of all, I'd like to comment on the performance report. You'll see that we have completely overhauled and changed the format of the report this time. It's what we promised we were going to do at the end of when we presented Q1 to try and make it more meaningful. Previously, we've just reported the actuals for the year for a number of our key indicators. We've now included in against each of the indicators a target where it's relevant. Not all of them will have a target, but we're still working on the ones that don't to see whether there should be a target put in. So we have some idea of what we're measuring against. And there is also the previous year actuals in the report as well, so you can get a feeling for the trend, i.e. are we doing better or worse against last year, and how are we compared against our target. It's all set out for you in that report. It's still work in progress. It's quite a significant change we've put through in 1 quarter, but I think we are getting to the point where our performance reporting will start looking more meaningful. You can actually see where we are, the trend, the direction of travel we've got, and whether we're actually achieving the targets that we probably have set ourselves, either within the budget, because obviously some of them will be linked to volumes, which will then link to cost, or whether they're linked to promises or objectives in the corporate plan. So I think it's a good move forward. I hope members agree as well that we're moving in the right direction. In addition, we have talked about the airport and the airport having that regular transport report to full council, and as I promised Councillor Marcus last quarter, we've now included that within the overall performance report, and you can see that the passenger numbers, the actual movements and the freight is included in there against the target for the year and with the previous year, so there's quite a comprehensive set of information about the airport. Obviously, as you know, on transport we did rather hope that we would be able to use the total transport position, including the sea transport, but as we know, and we've rehearsed in previous meetings, that we've been unable to get that data to a level of detail that we would really need to do any analysis due to the commercial sensitivity of that data by the operator. So we've just gone back on the information we do have, which is in our control. It's all included there now, so we don't need a separate transport report. In terms of the risk register, you'll also touch on that the risk register, again, we've done a piece of work to simplify the risk register this quarter. The risk register had become a little bit of a recording process of recording all our activity for the last 3 years against each risk, rather than just identifying what the risk was and what the current activity is. We had a sort of a potted history of what's happened in the last couple of years. We've removed the potted history and focused on what the current risk looks like now and what the current activity is. So it's reduced it significantly from 30 plus pages to a more meaningful document, where I think each risk is pretty much covered 1 page only, with the commentary by the officers who are responsible for those risks. And we've also got a relatively good steady process now where they are reviewed on a quarterly basis, whereas I think a couple of years ago our risks were not being reviewed on a regular basis and they were quite outdated. So I think simplified, regular monitoring, and I think again an improved position in terms of our reporting to you of our risk and performance position. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus, please.
Excuse me. It's good to see some more detail there, and I realise it is work in progress. Can we just make it a bit more readable, please? Because tables are higgledy-piggledy. I don't know which bit I'm reading where. There's blank pages. So underneath that somewhere, I'm sure the improvements will be really good, but it's a bit all over the place at the moment. I think that's it really. I found it, for this one, I found it quite hard to glean any information? Because I wasn't sure which table was referencing which bit and on which page. So next time, hopefully, will be better.
Thank you. Vice Chair, please.
Yeah, in one of my roles, I have regular conversations with staff and the community about complaints and FOIs. I just wonder, FOIs, do they have statutory timescales they need to be responded to? And if they do, I wonder if that should be a performance indicator we have. It might also just give an indication of volume of FOIs across the authority. So that's just throw it up there. And complaints appear twice. It's 0 on page 7, but I suspect the more accurate figures are page 6.
Yeah, can I just respond?
Yeah, please do.
FOIs, yes, there is a set deadline. We can introduce that in reporting, and we will do that. We look to see how we can do that and get meaningful information for you. In terms of the complaints, I think the reason you'll get a little bit confused with the complaints, and it may be some of the other people, is I think there was an agreement, well, I'm sure there was because I sat in the room in the council chamber here, that you wanted the complaints recorded against each service. That's why they're repeated. It's not complaints in total, you wanted to see it by service. That is now incorporated in there. So each area should have a level of complaints again. I won't pretend that we've got that 100% there at the moment, but we're getting there. But that is the reason it repeats.
It'd be nice to record compliments too, but maybe that's for another day.
Okay, thank you very much. Could I have a proposer and a seconder, please, for the adoption of the recommendations? Councillor White, seconded Councillor Sims. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you for the report. Item 10 on our agenda is proposed disposal of land at Porthcressa in the hands of our Strategic Director of Place, Nicola. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. Just a short report that relates to, as I say, disposal of land at Porthcressa. The need for this arises from the new substation that's required to serve the electricity supply for the redevelopment of the town hall. Originally, it was intended to bring a supply down from the rear of Garrison Lane, but that would cause significant disruption, and locally it was thought that it was better to provide a separate substation. There are a number of technical constraints about where that substation can go. That led us to the Porthcressa site. So National Grid have asked us whether that would be a suitable site for us to dispose of. So the recommendation is that we dispose of the site, but also we get delegated approval to myself to finalise that agreement, because at the moment we're just working out whether it also needs planning permission or not. And if we haven't got any planning control, we may want to put some design controls into the freehold sale agreement. So the recommendation is there for you on page 79, that we approve the disposal of the land and delegate authority to myself to finalise the agreement to put that those legal issues set out in the report in place if they're required. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dean, please.
Yeah, not much to add really. I guess the question would be whether it's a suitable place because of where it is in the sea defences and exposure to the elements, but I'm assuming that National Grid have said that's where they want to put it. So if that's where they want to put it, that's kind of where we'll put it. So I'll propose the recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Sims, please.
I'll second the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus, please.
Yeah, so this won't weaken the sea defences in any way, will it?
No, probably should have said I have checked also the European grant funding as well, and we're okay on the terms and conditions of that as well, and it doesn't affect the sea defences now.
And this extra substation, is that all, who's paying for that? Is that all part
So
of
the project has to pay for this utility supplies for the new town hall redevelopment. So we have to pay National Grid to provide that new supply. That's already within the capital budget for the project. So the cost of this will come out of the project budget. It's already been accommodated.
Is this more expensive than the original option?
No, it should provide better value for money.
Is it more expensive than the original?
No.
No. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I have a sorry, Councillor Nixon, please.
Yeah, sorry, Nicholas, one quick question as well. Assuming it passes all planning, When's it anticipated that the substation will be put in place, and how much disruption will there be to traffic flow in the area, considering that it's already a lot?
Yeah, so we've got it in their work programme between February and April, so in that window.
Thank you. So we have a proposer and seconder for the recommendations. All those in favour, please. That's carried unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you for the report, Nicola. Item 11 on our agenda is the biodiversity reporting duty in the hands of our Chief Planning Officer, Lisa. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. This item relates to the Council's first biodiversity duty report, which we are required to publish under the Environment Act 2021. We put this together with the Environment team, and it sets out the actions we've taken between February 2024 and December 2025 to conserve and enhance biodiversity across our functions. And these include integrating biodiversity into planning policy, supporting habitat management, and working with partners on the local nature recovery strategy. And members are asked to note the report and endorse its publication in line with statutory guidance. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus.
Yeah, it's good to see how BNG has been used and the processes involved. I propose recommendations.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Blackwell. Thank you. All those in favour of the recommendations? That's passed unanimous. Thank you very much. And thank you, Lisa. Item 12 on our agenda is the Climate Adaptation SILI Phase 2. The report of our Head of Environment, Rebecca, please.
Thank you. Morning, members. So this report presents an update and proposed direction of travel for climate adaptation SILI coastal defence work since the programme was paused back in 2014. The report highlights a list of schemes which are outstanding and for which approvals and permissions have already been sought. It's proposed that these outstanding schemes are delivered and funding spent as originally planned. Officers recognise the need to re-engage with the communities on these schemes, particularly on Briar, to understand their feelings towards the schemes and seek their participation for their long-term success. Schemes which can be delivered will ultimately depend on funding and their suitability, and so these may change as we progress with the programme. To ensure Phase 2 of Climate Adaptive SILI is managed appropriately, it's recommended that members nominate 5 members to sit on the project oversight group. It's proposed this includes the lead member for Environment and the lead members of St Agnes, Briar and St Martins, as well as a member to represent St Mary's. In terms of funding the outstanding schemes, funding has already been approved and allocated to the Council by the Environment Agency. Officers seek members' approval, however, to uplift the capital programme to reflect the additional funding needed to deliver the schemes. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. We don't have our lead member present today, unfortunately, because of the funeral, but
Yeah, I was just going to ask about Briar because of the interest in the schemes that were there last time. Have they been consulted about this?
So they will be, that's our plan, obviously. Moving forward is to do that as soon as possible in the new year, to go to Briar and perhaps do a survey for residents as well so we can understand their buy-in for the works.
Okay, and these are the same schemes that they didn't particularly like last time?
That's my understanding, but I feel it would be prudent for us to ask that again and to make sure in our minds that that is still correct.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sims, please.
Just bearing with reference to nominating 5 members, I think it would be particularly useful for if the Briar member is on it, and also the St Agnes members, because they seem to be the off-islands which do the bulk of the work on it, though Councillor Peacock could certainly handle the St Agnes aspect of it. So I just, but the thing is, nobody's here from those islands, so I'm reluctant to give people jobs they don't necessarily want.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus.
Quite the contrary, I'll totally nominate the off-island members. If they're not here, then it's tough, really. They should be here, so.
Okay, thank you very much. You've got the recommendations before you. Can I have Councillor Mumford.
Have we nominated a St Mary's councillor? No. So who, anybody, what?
Right.
Oh, you're doing, yeah. I just, you know, we've approved the Agnes and those, and then there's the lead member, so you want one more member, don't you?
Are you volunteering, Councillor Sims? Did I say?
Yeah, okay, I'll second that.
Okay, all
Thank
those
you.
in favour of Councillor Sims? That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Job done. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that to my attention, Councillor Mumford. So could I have a proposer for the recommendations, please? Councillor White, and the seconder, Councillor Marcus. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for the report. Also in your hands, Rebecca, is item 13, the civil enforcement and on-street parking.
Thank you. So yes, this report seeks members' approval for the direction of travel in tackling on-street parking issues and supporting delivery of safer streets. This report makes a series of recommendations for how Council can work towards this. The recommendations presented to members are in accordance with the options table presented in the report for members' consideration. The report details the complexities and requirements needed to deliver civil enforcement on St Mary's. Civil enforcement is a highly complex legal process and one which will take a great deal of commitment and resources, both in staffing and costs. Importantly, the Council would be extremely challenged in delivering civil enforcement because authorities must ensure their schemes are self-financing and can be certain they can afford to pay from it from within existing funding. The Secretary of State will not expect either national or local taxpayers to meet any deficit. This is ultimately why civil enforcement is not recommended way forward for the Council, as Council has no means to self-finance this service and for other reasons as outlined in the report. It is therefore recommended that Council approves the direction of travel to include physical adaptations to the highways and footways as a mechanism for tackling problematic parking at priority locations across St Mary's, as well as working with the community to further develop the concept designs for Hugh Street and to work with the Department of Transport and other suitable government departments to seek and bid for funding to support the Council in its direction of travel. And to importantly work in collaboration with the Devon and Cornwall Police to ensure that enforcement of parking is actioned and to more broadly work with and support the Council in its direction of travel for safer streets. Thank you and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sims, please.
Thank you, Rebecca, for the report. Now, it's a odd sort of report because it spends a great deal of time explaining when we can't do anything, which is perhaps not the usual way it goes, but it, as it makes very clear, enforcement's a real issue, and perhaps what we need to focus on is what we can do, and there's not a great deal of flesh on that, but I think that I don't know how you put it, re-landscaping some of the roads and things that would be an extremely useful thing to do, and I'm pleased to see that there's an emphasis on the pavements and footways, because there's an awful lot of, particularly out of town, there's an awful lot of pavements which people with those accursed pushchairs with the little wheels at the front just can't go on. So you've got families walking in roads and things, and I mean we do need to remedy that. And if we can get them out to 1.5 metres, great. But so I welcome the report, and I propose the recommendations.
Thank you very much. Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you for preparing this report, especially for explaining the issues around civil enforcement. It's helpful to understand this after questions about it at the recent Porthmelon users meeting. I'm particularly keen to progress consultation with the community around all these issues and would like to second the 6 recommendations.
Thank you very much. So I have a proposer, and sorry, Councillor Dean, please.
Yeah, just on that, I haven't had any feedback from that meeting you had down in the industrial estate, and obviously the industrial estate is not. We mostly talk about Hugh Street in this report, but that's going to become a major problem with the filling station being the only filling station down there. So I'd quite like to get some feedback from that meeting, and also have another paper come back maybe about what we're going to do down there, please.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus, please.
Yeah, I'd second that, please. And also, I just want to reiterate my nervousness around Hugh Street next summer, because it is a really, it's a cliche, it is an accident waiting to happen, it feels like. And if something bad did happen, if we didn't, we need to be taking action. Writing letters is great, and capital plans for the future, brilliant, really nice, pretty drawings, but something could happen really quickly. And so feedback from the meeting, and what we're going to do this summer would be really good if we can have that report as soon as we can as well, please.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sims.
Yes, and I did mean to ask Nicola, really, when will the area around the back of the town hall be clear? Obviously, approximately, because it would be quite nice to know that.
Next autumn, so this time next year.
Oh, so
clear.
it's
It does impact on timing, of course, because what we need to make sure is if we're reducing parking in one space, it will be displaced somewhere else. So you've got to think about what's the right timing for this, and actually when the car park opens to the rear of the town hall, that would be the ideal time, I think. So we do need to think about the impact of any changes, because
that was exactly why I asked the question, because it's trying to do something with that situation there would just be preposterous. So it gives us a reasonable amount of time to do this properly, and a very solid excuse to do it in good time as opposed to hurrying it. Thank you.
But I would say that doesn't solve the problem for this summer. For like in 4 months' time, it's going to be really busy, and something could happen. So,
yeah, I agree, and I think the last two proposals are key to that. That we get some police enforcement happening. You know, not so much just the lots of parking, but the really stupid parking, the illegal parking when you're parked opposite a junction or on a junction. I mean, it's ludicrous that the police don't enforce that. So yes, particularly those last two recommendations.
Thank you. So we have a proposer and a seconder for the recommendations. All those in favour, please. That's carried unanimous. Thank you. And I would just like to state from the chair, as Councillor Sims mentioned earlier, that we can't do this alone as a council. We need the community to buy in to this consultation and to help us from the ground up to actually achieve better safety with our traffic and our parking. We need you to engage, please, as a community and help us achieve this. We can't do it alone and enforce it easily. So please engage and help us before we have an accident. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you, Rebecca, for your report. We move on now to item 14 on our agenda, which is the post-16 residue funding and an open letter to DFE in the hands of our Director of Children's Services, Sue. Thank you, Sue.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This report sets out 4 proposals to you today with some background information, which I'm sure members will be keen to pursue in questions. But the 4 recommendations in front of you are that we are proposing to establish the creation of a post-16 hardship and additional vulnerabilities fund using any residual underspend from the money allocated by the DFE for post-16s accommodation on the mainland. The second recommendation, which we're asking you to approve, is to delegate to myself and in consultation with the Chief Executive and Legal Officer, the creation of some criteria for the application to that fund, and we will ensure that it's managed in a prudent, appropriate and effective way, using our judgments around need in a way which sits with our statutory accountability. So we will be mindful of the need to do that in a very fair and appropriate way. Thirdly, we are proposing an immediate uplift of travel support for college visits and interviews by students from the current position, which is £250 per family, to double that, £500 per family. And that's in response to the representations that have been made by parents outlining exactly how expensive it is to set out opportunities for visits to colleges. And in addition to that uplift, we're proposing that in relation to off-island children, there will be an additional factor for reasonable boating costs to be included. And the final recommendation in the paper before you is that the funding challenges in relation to the grant from the DFE will be again written about to the department. Laura, my senior colleague, will be able to update on her recent meetings with the DFE, which have not been, I think it's fair to say, very promising in terms of any additional funding in relation to post-16s. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't continue to make very strong representations. And this report sets out how that will be pursued. Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take questions, or for Laura to take any detailed questions.
Thank you very much, Sue. Vice Chair, Councillor Williams, please.
Yeah, I've got a few observations. I'll make those. Certainly, I welcome the report. I welcome the opportunity for Council again to discuss post-16 matters in a public open forum. I think that's healthy for us, bearing in mind its position in the community. My first point was going to be a reminder of the public meeting tonight at 6 p.m. in here to discuss post-16 matters. We're targeting parents of Year 9 and above. If any young people wanted to come along as well, I think they would be made welcome. So we can have that conversation again. Particularly welcome the Hardship and Vulnerabilities Fund. I'm mindful of a question asked at the start of a meeting. My point of view is that I've sat down with young people and they've told me about the stresses and strains they face, the conversations they're having with their parents about not making choices based on what their dream is, where they want to go, but sometimes what they can afford as a family. So I'm hoping this Hardship Fund can raise some aspirations, reduce some of that anxiety, and we can target it where it's most needed, most required. So I'm supportive of that Hardship Fund. I don't underestimate how much work needs to be going to creating a policy that is transparent, equitable, can be applied meaningfully. So I think some workshops with members would be useful for that to happen before it comes back to Council and is approved. 4.3 of the report talks about the internal residue funding, the Council's element. And that could be redirected. It talks about it being ring-fenced, so certainly would support that as members we do ring-fence that fund so there's no anxiety about that money being lost to the post-16 conversations. Particularly welcome the uplift in the college visit fund. It was too low for too long. We've increased it a year or so ago and we're now increasing it more significantly today. And again, that was a theme that came out of a public meeting back in October. We discussed that in length, so it's a good example, I feel, of where we can demonstrate we have listened to what parents have been telling us. The DFE letter and conversations, you alluded to those, Sue. I've had various conversations with DFE and have also been underwhelmed by what I've been hearing about an uplift in funding, so we could perhaps explore that as a question in just a minute. But I think there's very much an appetite from the conversations I've had with officers and members to produce a much more robust letter to DFE, setting out our concerns and anxieties and how we need to move forward with them. And also 3.3 of the report talks about some of the other matters we spoke about at our last public meeting in terms of making the host family situation more robust, more resilient, more transparent. So I'm also mindful of the comments that Ofsted made in their report, their last monitoring visit. I'd like to have some good progress to report to Ofsted in the new year. But yeah, my question, Sue, I think is probably to you. You alluded to the fact the meeting on the 10th of December with the DFE wasn't promising. Is there anything else you can tell us about that discussion?
Yes, I think it's more appropriate that Laura picks that up, given that she led those conversations.
Yeah, that's fine. So I met with the DFE on the 10th, and I made a strong representation again for our children and families. It's ongoing conversations that I have with the civil servants. This time, however, they were less forthcoming about any of the solutions that we've been identifying, including an uplift in money. They offered a fundamental review and further scrutiny around the money we currently receive, and their thought process was going down the way of means testing the allocation in line with all other DFE grants and funds, which is obviously not what we want for the Isles of Scilly, and nor do I think it would be an appropriate decision by the DFE. We are continuing to make fair representation and continuing these ongoing meetings. However, the DFE at the moment are very resistant to any further uplift, and even I would go as far as saying a continuation of the autonomy we have to spend the money we've got at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report, Laura. It's disappointing that the report was released after 5:30 on Friday, giving members nearly 2 days less than the required 5-day review period and limiting meaningful scrutiny. Additionally, despite the Council's no surprises to members policy, these recommendations were not shared or alternatives discussed with us before publication. With only 12 host bed spaces available and 2 year groups each school year in post-16, it's inevitable that many children won't even have the option of staying with an unregulated host family, currently the Council's recommended solution. As a result, the Council depends on some parents either turning to friends and relatives on the mainland or somehow covering the cost of a boarding alternative. To clarify, the funds in question are not an underspend, they are part of the annual allocation for each year group. The residual fund exists because 2 years ago, proactive parents requested more post-16 grant funding, but discovered the Council was returning unspent money to the Department of Education, undermining their case for increased funding. However, after discussion, last year the residue was not returned to the department and it was agreed to redistribute it. The Council held a face-to-face consultation with the parents of the 2 year groups concerned, and it was agreed that the fairest and most equitable way to distribute was equally between all parents of those year groups. Any parent who wished to donate funds back to the Council or another charity of their choice were able to do so. The Council now proposes to take that money each year and utilise it under the title of Hardship Fund. It is heartening to know that those families who face financial hardship and suffering additional vulnerabilities may already be in receipt of government benefits and have the opportunity to apply for one or more of the 4 hardship funds which are already available on the islands to assist. These include the Household Support Fund, the Discretionary Housing Payment, the Isles of Scilly Charitable Trust incorporating the Edward MacDonald Fund, the Pilot Widows Fund, whose priority areas specifically include support for young people and families. My fellow councillors need to be acutely aware when voting that during the post-16 parent consultation last year, parents voted against the hardship option now recommended and opted for a fairer and equal distribution. A parent consultation has not been offered prior to this paper being available. As you know, post-16 families have been petitioning the local MP, council and government in earnest for over 2 years now. With not enough host families for all children, parents are having to find around £10,000 every year for boarding. It remains a grim choice for many upcoming Year 10 and 11 students. The Ofsted report has also highlighted it as an ongoing concern for improvement. For those parents past, present and future who are paying back loans, behind on rent, utility and council tax bills, receiving a share of their year group residual fund will go a long way to help and to provide some parity to those living on the mainland who do not have these extra costs. Therefore, I would urge everyone voting to consider this new proposal. For an annual consultation with the parents of year groups concerned to discuss and vote on how they feel their residual post-16 funds should be dispersed. And I would like to ask that the recommendations proposed be voted on separately. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I bring in the monitoring officer, please, Leah? Thank you.
So I think it's incumbent upon me to come in at this point because Councillor Nixon's declared an interest and left the room. Councillor Blackwell's proposal squarely is referring to the 24-25 cohort of which Councillor Blackwell was a parent. So I think Councillor Blackwell is potentially getting into an area where she has a interest also.
Sorry, I've written myself a note underneath which I didn't add. I will abstain from recommendation 3 as there may be a potential personal interest. So I won't be voting on recommendation 3. Thank you.
But in terms of your new proposal, does that include, is your suggestion that there is a consultation with the parents of the 24-25 cohort?
I hadn't thought that far. It was for people going forward.
Because if it's for the cohorts going forward, so from 25-26, I see no issue. But if it's backwards looking, I think it gets into a potentially awkward situation in terms of interest.
I understand. I'm happy to make the proposal but not vote on it.
You wouldn't be able to make the proposal, somebody else would have to make it.
I'd be quite happy to make the proposal.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, so should we take this as an amendment?
Can I just be clear in terms of the proposal? Could you read it out one more time? So can you give Councillor Dean the wording?
Do you want me to read it out or give it to him?
I think it will have to become Councillor Dean's proposal.
So the proposal is proposed recommendation is for an annual consultation with the parents of year groups concerned to discuss and vote on how they feel their residual post-16 funds should be dispersed.
And can I be clear then that that is only forwards looking, or are you intending that to include the 24-25 cohort?
Well, I'd want it to start now.
So if that's to start now, you wouldn't be able to progress with any of the recommendations which are before you, because all of the recommendations are about spending the residual monies and the overspend. And so if there is a suggestion that there is to be a consultation, none of those proposals would be able to be moved at today's meeting.
Well, I think that's the point, isn't it?
Yeah, we can do number 4 about the letter to the DFE.
So the immediate uplift for college visits, etc.
Well, that would be, with all due respect, that would be the discussion that you'd have with parents. So you'd bring proposals to the parents group and agree it with the parents of said year. That's all.
Yeah, I'm just making it clear to the other members who are in the room that that would be the consequences of obviously voting through the proposed amendment.
Okay.
Councillor Blackwell and Councillor Dean, could you just turn your lights off? The Vice Chair can come in. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just concerned we can only spend this money once. We can't spend it on hardship, and we can't spend it on an uplift, and we can't spend it on an increase all at the same time. It will disappear. I'm acutely aware, as Councillor Mumford was, we had a conversation at Health and Wellbeing Board about child poverty, didn't we, last week? 1 in 5 children living on City are deemed to be living in poverty. It seems to me that's a horrific position for us to be in. It's similar across the whole county, across the whole country. The hardship fund for me is an opportunity for us to do something to reduce poverty. I'm hoping that Director of Public Health report will come to Council in the new year. I would love to be able to support all 3 things at once, but I think we can't do that. I don't think we can afford to support all 3 things. Giving parents a consultation on whether they want more money for themselves, I think that's only going to go one way. I would be voting to, I can't see that's going to go any other way than they would support that themselves. That sort of loses that bigger picture that those families might get more money, but it doesn't solve that sort of moving forward, that long-term position of creating a fund which supports those who perhaps need just a little bit more to alleviate some of those concerns. So my position still stands that if we're forward-thinking, thinking longer term, trying to raise people away from poverty, raise aspirations for some young people who can't afford it, for me the hardship fund is really the only way to resolve that. And then we sort of tie ourselves up in knots if we don't offer the uplift to the pre-college visits, where we had a long conversation about how we achieve that. So I would love to be able to split the money in 3 different directions. And my other point is, this money is very unpredictable in some respects. We don't know from one year to the next, one academic year, one cohort to the next, whether it's going to be that sum or that sum or that sum or that sum. So we almost end up with an unlevel playing field, in my opinion. So I'm very cognizant of the conversation that Councillor Dean and Councillor Blackwell are promoting. I'm just trying to think 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years down the line. I'm not overly optimistic the words with the Department for Education are landing as we would like, as we've heard previously in this debate. So my position, my point of view is, I'm still mindful to think how we support those who have got least. And I'll leave it there.
Can I just come back on that? I appreciate what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. I know that there is some hardship. Post-16 is incredibly expensive for all parents, and there isn't a great deal of choice. You know, you might not get a host family bed. It might not be an option for you. It might not be suitable. It might not be available. Going back to the quarter review we had earlier, one of the problems that we have is rent. People can't pay their rent. And when it comes to children, if there is no bed space, they will take a boarding option possibly because it's safer or because they had no choice. And they will find the money. They will have to find the money. And that may be one of the reasons we're finding that people can't pay their rent and they are behind on their bills, their council tax, because that's an issue. I appreciate what you're saying about hardship funds, but we do have hardship funds already in place. There are household support funds, discretionary housing payments, and the charitable trusts as well. There is availability for charity if people do need it.
I don't disagree. I would question, I'm, again, with another role, I'm chair of the charitable trust. We are cutting back on our expenditure. We can't afford to meet some of the demands. So if we were getting lots of applications for post-16, I don't think that would be a relevant, sustainable source. And the household support grant, Joseph might be able to add more. Every time we hear about this, it's going to be almost the last version of that. So I don't disagree with the sentiment, but to sort of pin hopes on household support grants and the charitable trust, I think is not correct, or not sustainable, not viable. But I think the general debate about child poverty, family poverty is very useful and worthwhile.
Thank you. I'll bring in the monitoring officer again, please, Leah. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add 2 points. So the first is that in the post-16 transport policy statement, which was approved by full council in March earlier this year, has within that policy the hardship fund. So this was an action point discussed at that March meeting to develop such a hardship fund, and this is those proposals coming forwards. In terms of the decision around the residue for 23-24 that went to full council in November 24, I believe, I think it's important for Sue and Laura to come back in. So for Sue to just reiterate to members how that decision came forward, but also for Laura to come in around her recent conversations with the DFE around use of the residual funding, because I think Laura's had some conversations with the DFE in respect of that. And then I think members will have to consider the proposal put forward, and somebody, it will obviously have to be seconded. We've only got a proposal at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Laura, can you come in, please?
Yeah, so with my conversations with DFE, I just would like to note, Russell could clarify further that the majority of this residue underspend is council finance, not DFE money. Is that correct, Russell?
We're not completely agreed that with the DFE yet, but that's our proposal and the way it was allocated. We want them to allocate that grant first and ours second. But
yeah,
we've done a return based on that, but they've now, as I understand from an email I received from you this morning, they've come back for more information, so they haven't necessarily agreed that approach, but that is our proposal. It still means there's grant and council funding, but our proposal is to take it in a way that frees up more of the council funding. But as I said, we need DFE approval and yet to get that.
Yeah. They also did not endorse the approach previously going forward. So they were happy with the previous agreement, which I know that Sue mentioned at the start was done due to the timescales we were given and the consultation that went ahead with families. They do not see it as a fair way to allocate that fund out to families because, as Councillor Williams said previously, there is going to be a different amount every year. Some years there will be no underspend, some years there'll be a fair amount like there is this year. So the idea of putting it towards a hardship fund is more sustainable going forwards, as opposed to splitting it out, where some years some families could get £1,000 and other years they'll get nothing.
Thank you very much, Laura. Councillor White, please.
Yes, so first of all, I want to say thank you for the report and particularly all the hard work that has gone into improving the host family arrangements. I think we're offering now much greater assurances for children, parents and the host families themselves. And I welcome a lot of these proposals, particularly the uplift in funding for travel support and especially that off-island boating costs will be covered going forwards. Of the recommendations in the report, the only one that isn't gone into in more detail is recommendation 4, to approve a strengthened representation to the DFE regarding funding challenges for Isles of Scilly families. And it would be good to get some more information on what this might contain and what the aim of it is beyond further funding. What will the ask be?
So would you like to come in on that?
Well, the ask will be based on additional funding. I mean, that's what we have to do. I mean, assuming, well, it depends on the base position that we adopt in this report and going forward. I mean, as the current position is that we don't believe that there will be any basis for any additional funding coming from the DFE. So therefore, we will have to put a proposal forward that challenges that and as strongly as we're able to do. But we haven't got a figure around that currently agreed.
I've spoken before in this chamber about the fact that I think there are a series of interconnected issues that are negatively affecting our community, leading to a declining working age population on the islands and our difficulty as a council to recruit staff to key roles. Issues that, if not addressed, could potentially lead to a hollowing out of our community in the future. And those issues are around transport, housing, cost of living, and difficulties around family life, insufficient access to childcare, for example, and the post-16 especially, all serve to make the islands a less attractive prospect for working families than they used to be. And I know that we are, as a council, working hard on all of these issues, but they are things that will take time to fix. Now, we all know families that have left the islands before their children left secondary education, not wanting to face the stress of sending their children away to the mainland at 16 and the financial strain of meeting the additional costs. I know that the grant from the DFE has increased, and as a council, we have provided an uplift to that. But we all know that the costs of post-16 for our community are higher than the funding provided and more than we have the budget to meet ourselves as a council. It's good to read in the report that the number of host families is currently meeting demand, but we know in recent years that for larger cohorts that hasn't been the case, and families that have been unable to secure host family lodgings for their children have had to find alternative arrangements. I know of one young lad who went off to do a vocational qualification. His family couldn't secure accommodation near his place of study and in the end had to rent him a flat on his own. Luckily, he was self-sufficient enough to cope in that situation, but I'm sure we can all agree that it's not one that we would want to see our 16-year-old children placed in. Other families have had no option except state schools with boarding arrangements and ended up tens of thousands of pounds in debt meeting the additional costs. So while host family numbers are currently meeting demand, we know that in a small community like ours, cohort numbers vary widely from year to year, and we could easily find ourselves in the same situation again where demand outstrips capacity. And that's why I'd like to recommend that this letter to the DFE spells out in no uncertain terms the stark financial situation some in our community have ended up in simply to meet the legal requirement of keeping their children in educational training, and that the case is made for additional funding to cover the cost of state boarding options to give us parity with other island communities around the UK. And if the response is a deflection, that the most comparable communities are in Scotland, where education and associated funding is a devolved matter, then I think we have to ask that why, with that being the case, the UK government seemingly values our children and their outcomes less than the Scottish government does theirs. And in fact, I'd like to ask the monitoring officer if I can propose an additional recommendation, that being that the letter to the DfE mentioned in recommendation 4 makes the case for increased funding to cover the cost of Ofsted regulated boarding accommodation options, both to ensure Isles Scilly students can access the courses and accommodation that suits their needs and give parity with other remote island communities around the UK.
Could you
Sorry.
please, Leah?
Before I answer that particular question, I address the procedural issue, which is Councillor Dorian Smith left the meeting.
He's come back in now.
Oh, he's come back in. Right, fine. Okay, so I can now address your matter. Thank you. So yes, that would be a proposal you could make. And obviously, if you're proposing it, somebody would need to second that.
Okay, then I'd like to make that proposal, please.
Can I just say, currently we've got 2 proposals on the table at the moment. We've got the one put forward by Councillor Dean, which hasn't been seconded, and we've got the one put forward by Councillor White, which hasn't been seconded yet. So I think we need to address those 2.
I'm happy
Okay,
to
well, I'll
second.
just hear other councillors a minute first, and then I'll ask for a seconder for those 2 proposals. Councillor Marcus, please.
Yeah, I just want to explore Councillor Blackwell's proposal a little bit more, if that's all right.
Councillor Dean's.
Councillor Dean's, sorry, proposal. Just in terms of, so when I read the paper, my initial reaction was that the proposal about the creation of the criteria about the creation of the hardship funds was too woolly. It wasn't there's talk there of contextual family circumstances. That sounds subjective rather than objective. So I was wondering whether there could be more backwards and forwards. You know, in terms of when we did the housing allocation policy, there were council workshops on that, and we discussed that in depth for months and months and months before that was actually just went out to consultation and was adopted. I would hope something like this would be more than just officers deciding what they want to do. So I don't know whether there's something more in the words here that I've missed about consultation with families, with members at least, not and families hopefully. Sue, or want to come back on that?
I think it would be difficult to consult with families who were directly potentially beneficiaries of any additional funds. I think that does place us in a difficult position as officers in terms of being able to do that in the most effective way and in a way which manages probity correctly. I don't think that I do apologise for the contextual family circumstances phrase. It is a bit jargony, but it actually is the way that we assess families in all sorts of ways, where we take into account their whole circumstances, not just particular aspects of their positions. So that's what that is. That means really a holistic assessment of the circumstances that were leading to hardship for the young person involved, and that maybe is unclear. But I mean, we would attempt to do it in the most effective, efficient, and wide-ranging way, so that the full circumstances are taken into account. But I think at the end of the day, that sits with the responsibility of the statutory officers.
Yes, it does. But I think what we're seeing here is a political response to the issue, and that members are reflecting the view in the community that this is really important. And
I'd be happy to consult with members over it.
yeah, okay. Well, that's good. I mean, just the view that, just reiterating that point, the view that is really up on the top of the agenda of a lot of lot of members and a lot of the public on the island as a really important viewpoint and issue that needs to be resolved. Okay.
Can I potentially come in, Councillor Marker? So in the report, there's recommendations 1 and 2 which are connected. So recommendation 2 gives delegated authority to the Director of Children's Services in consultation with Section 151 and monitoring officer with the delegated authority to formulate the eligibility criteria, processes and procedures to be finalised by 28th of February. If members are wanting that to come back before members, then that is open to members. So if you're wanting that to come back to March for council, members are able to do that.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy to do that rather than Councillor Dean's proposal, to be fair. So I'm happy that members would be involved, not necessarily going out to consultation again as a wide thing.
Thank you. Councillor Sims, please.
It's a number of things now. Just regarding Councillor White's proposal, which is a perfectly reasonable proposal, it's just that I would caution against putting a proposal sort of with parity with other UK islands, because the government just says, well, that's Scotland, it's a different legal entity, sod off. It doesn't work. You can't. If you try and equate us with Scotland, then they just say, well, it's not in our rule, but so it needs to be phrased differently. And the other thing which I've been concerned about this for quite a while, the residue funding. We're going to write a strongly worded letter, or a strong letter to the DFE to say we haven't got sufficient money, and they're going to come back and say, well, year on year, you don't seem to spend it all. And we need to resolve that, because we all know that we need this money, and there's a huge disparity in what we get and what we need. But it doesn't look like that to government, because we are not spending year on year that money, and that has to be resolved, because it's another reason to say, well, no, we're not going to give you the money, because you clearly don't need it because you don't spend it. Now, the reason that perhaps it's not spent is because it's actually insufficient to cover everything, so some things don't get covered. But anyway, that's the point I'm making. That is a real issue. If you're asking government for money and you're not spending what you're currently getting, then they've got a very, very strong reason to turn around and say no, and that is what they're looking for.
Thank you. Councillor Dean, please.
Thank you, Councillor Sims. That was going to exactly be my point. If we start this, this pot of money to help the poor people, and I get it's a really honourable thing to do, really good thing to do, to have this hardship fund. But I completely agree with Councillor Sims. If you don't spend the money in the year on that year group, it looks like we don't need it, and we do need it. We desperately need it. We all know of people that have spent far too much money on their children's education because they didn't have a choice, not because they wanted to, not because they wanted to send them to a private school, but because that was the only option that they felt was available to them. And going back to Councillor White's proposal, I'll absolutely second that, because the case has been made. We've made it time and time again. That original letter that was sent out that Councillor Blackwell shared with us last night made the case fantastically. And we've got more cases to, to pull from now. We can demonstrate that we need this money, and we have to have parity with the mainland. And it's for the Department for Education to just keep batting us away and saying, no, we don't agree with you, we're not going to give you any more money. It's ludicrous. They need to give us some more money. It's not fair. And that's the bottom line. It just is not fair. And I know we live in a real world, and I know we can't always get what we want, but that doesn't change the fact that it's unfair, and we should be doing everything we possibly can to make it fair. So.
Thank you. Leah, can I just check, please, where we go from here? Am I going to take the two proposals and we're going to add them to the proposals? Is that correct?
Chair, the only proposal that's currently on the table that's got a proposer and a seconder is Councillor White's revised recommendation 4. So if Councillor White, I would that is the DFE letter. My advice would be to take that recommendation first, as amended by Councillor White and seconded by Councillor Dean, and move to the vote on that, which all members in the room can vote on. And then my suggestion would be that the other recommendations are taken individually, but that Councillor Blackwell consider her position in terms of having an interest and removing herself from the chamber.
Okay, thank you. So for Councillor White's proposal, we have a proposer and seconder. All those in favour, sorry, Councillor Mumford.
Could Councillor White just read that proposal again so we know what we're voting on?
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and I'll take into account Councillor Sims' point about parity with island communities. So I would propose that the letter to the DfE mentioned in recommendation 4 make the case for increased funding to cover the cost of Ofsted regulated boarding accommodation options to ensure Isles of Scilly students can access the courses and accommodation that suits their needs.
Okay, thank you. So you've heard the extra proposal. Could we vote on it, please?
Sorry, Chair, can Councillor Dean just confirm he seconds that as slightly amended?
Yeah, I confirm. I'll second that proposal.
Thank you. So can we vote on that, please? All those in favour of Councillor White's proposal, please. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. So that is included. Now we have Councillor Dean's proposal. Do we have a seconder for Councillor Dean's proposal, please? Do you want to read it again?
Shall I read it again? Yeah.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry to interject, and I do apologise, Councillor Dean. Can I just, because I think Councillor Blackwell, I raised the issue of the interest. Councillor Dean's taken the proposal on as his own. Are you, in terms of having an interest, going to be removing yourself from the chamber?
So I would like to abstain from recommendation 3 in that respect.
But in terms of recommendation 1 and 2, we've now, the proposal that Councillor Dean is reading out is an alternative to 1 and 2, specifically about consulting with parents, including the 24-25 cohort, of which you're then directly affected.
Sorry, could you say that?
I think they're inextricably linked. So proposals 1 and 2 in terms of a hardship fund, as drafted, are about moving forwards. The proposal that Councillor Dean is going to read out is in terms of carrying out a consultation with parents on how any underspend should be used, including the 24-25 cohort, which directly affects the ability to move recommendations 1 and 2 as drafted. I think they're inextricably linked.
I'd beg to differ. However, for the sake of, I will remove myself from the room.
Can I just make clear, it is your decision as councillor. I can only provide advice, but raise the issue.
I would like to vote because I am representing the community here.
I just raised the issue that the proposal you've put forward that Councillor Dean is now taking on, and you said you will abstain from voting on, is about not proceeding with the recommendations as proposed, which is about the cohorts moving forward from 25-26, but instead to consult with parents on how the underspend should be used, including the 24-25 cohort. You can't then move on to recommendations 1 and 2 if Councillor Dean's proposal is seconded and voted upon. That they're all inextricably linked.
Okay, I'll leave the room. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Dean, could you read out the...
Yeah, so my proposal is for an annual consultation with the parents of year groups concerned to discuss and vote on how they feel their residual post-16 funds should be dispersed.
Do I have a seconder, please?
I'm very confused.
So the proposal is that the money
yes,
is
yes, but
shared out.
Are we not having proposals 1 and 2?
No, because the hardship fund is being created from the residual fund. So what I'm proposing is that the residual fund is shared out in consultation with the parents of that year group.
I've got you.
So that the money
I've
all
got
gets spent. That's
got
the
you.
proposal.
Can I just be clear? Recommendations 1, 2 and 3 would not be able to proceed today because they are all premised on using the underspend, the residual funding from 24-25. So if Councillor Dean's proposal is seconded and voted upon, which is purely in the member's gift, I just point out that you then wouldn't be able to vote on 1, 2 or 3 because that is all premised on it coming from the residual funding from 24-25.
Thank you. Could I take Vice Chairman and then Councillor Dorian Smith and then Councillor Mumford, please?
Yeah, I just want exact clarity too, Leah. So if we support the recommendation of Councillor Dean, we kill off the hardship fund and we kill off the uplift in the additional funding for all children, young people to visit colleges. And we also risk not having this reserve in future years.
If Councillor Dean's proposal is to consult with the parents of children from each relevant cohort, what it does is it means you have to put off voting on recommendations 1, 2 and 3 today, because you would have to, if that proposal is seconded and voted upon, you'd have to move to a engagement and consultation exercise, and it may be that in a future meeting, dependent on the feedback from that engagement and consultation, you come back with proposals like a hardship fund, like an uplift for college visits, etc. But you won't know that until you carry out the consultation. But you wouldn't be able to vote on any of those 3 today if you're voting on going out to an engagement or consultation exercise with parents.
Thanks.
Is that clear?
Councillor Dorian Smith, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I've listened carefully, but I'm a little confused. I certainly couldn't support anything where the parents for that particular year were asked to allocate whatever spare funds there were between them, whatever label you put on it, because I think that is going to be contentious by any standards. I totally take Steve Sims' point that governments like to see money spent within the fiscal year. And in fact, you've only got to look at government departments who frequently scramble to spend money by the end of March in any particular year because they want to be awarded a similar sum for the following year. So history would be against the council because clearly there has been surpluses which haven't been spent, and that would be pointed out very quickly. I also agree that any comparison with the Scottish Isles, I mean, all my life we've tried to get any sort of parity where anything to do with Scotland is applied to Scilly, and you, Chairman, know because you've been at all the conferences and so on. It's a rag to a bull because it simply gives them a straightforward, simple answer to say no. So I totally recognise the problem, and I know the implications of it for Highland families are very severe in many cases. However, a decision such as Councillor Dean's proposal, I personally couldn't support.
Thank you very much. Councillor Marcus, please.
So I just wanted to again explore this proposal. What you're saying, Councillor Dean, is that you want to send a message to the DfE saying that the money that we're getting from them is not enough, full stop. By creating a hardship fund, what you're afraid of is legitimising the amount that they're sending us and saying that we can sort the problem out ourselves. Is that, am I...
Well, it's more simple than that, really. It's the fact that we wouldn't have spent it all. We'd have put it into a pot for future years. That's basically what we're talking about, this hardship fund. The money, so the residual money from this year, or this last year, would go into a pot to help people going forward. So what we're actually, the message we're sending then is that we didn't use all the money, but we're going to keep it anyway because we think we might need it next year. So if you're the government, you're going to go, well, you haven't bloody spent what we sent you last year. Why would
How's
we?
that different from the parents?
How's that different from what, sorry?
How's that different from the parents saying?
Well, because they would spend it in that year. I'm clearly not explaining myself very well, but it seems pretty straightforward to me. So if we've got £1 million from the government for our post-16 education for a year group, and we spend 500,000 of it because that's all that the parents have claimed for, we would say, well, we'll keep the other £500,000 for, you know, for hardship for the going forward. So the government would say, well, you've only spent half of it, so why would we even equal what we gave you last? They wouldn't do it, would they? That makes sense? Makes sense in my head.
Thank you. I'm going to take Councillor Sims, and then we will find out if Councillor Dean has a seconder. Councillor Sims, please.
Thank you. I'm moving away from this proposal now. I don't think it's necessarily. If you're going to consult, presumably this would be a consultation with a group of people, and they're all going to come in and say how broke they are, and it's slightly awkward to get a level of honesty, or not so much honesty, just slightly embarrassment with this situation. So, whilst I think ostensibly it seems like a really good idea, I just think it muddies the waters enormously. And I mean, clearly there will be a great degree of consultation, irrespective, even though it's only on the basis that people have to apply for it. So there'll be a toing and froing. So on that basis, I'm inclined to think we stick with the original recommendations and disregard Tim's, because I don't think it actually significantly helps the masses. I think it just confuses the issue.
Thank you. So do I have Leah first? Sorry. Laura, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to remind everybody that in our conversations with the DFE that they would not be supportive of the residue underspend being shared out equally among families, just due to the disparity that would cause across the year groups. I just thought that was prudent to mention that again.
Thank you.
Chairman, could I recommend the original recommendations in the report? I think on balance, having heard the arguments, that the report has nailed it. It is the council's job, as ever and ever and ever, we've got to keep beating the drum in Whitehall to get more money for Scilly in whatever form, and this is a very important one. But we are on it the whole time with housing, with transport and everything else. Scilly always needs a disproportionate amount of money, and getting that message across is the duty of officers and members, and always has been. So I'm proposing as the recommendation as written in the report. Hopefully somebody might second that.
No, excuse me, I'm sorry, you can't speak at the moment. We are dealing with Councillor Dean's proposal first. He has made a proposal. Is there a seconder for Councillor Dean's proposal, please? No. So in that case, there is no further proposal. Now Councillor Dorian Smith has proposed that we take the recommendations as in the report, and we have a further recommendation from Councillor White, which has been voted on and supported. Could I please, sorry, Councillor Marcus.
Yeah, I would like to amend that recommendation because it gives delegated authority straight to the, basically members need to be involved in the discussion of the creation of the eligibility criteria.
Yeah, I don't think anyone will have any,
Leah's hand is up too.
Sorry, Leah?
So, as I understand it, Chair, Councillor Dorian Smith is proposing recommendations 1, 2 and 3. We've already voted on recommendation 4. In terms of recommendation 2, in respect of that, we could just say to be brought back to March for council meeting for approval by members at the end of recommendation 2.
Yes. Okay.
I'm happy to accept that amendment.
Okay, do I have a seconder, please, for Councillor Dorian Smith's recommendation? Councillor Sims, all those in favour? Yeah. And Councillor Dean, are you abstaining or are you voting against?
I'll abstain. But just to say, I mean, no, we're still going to leave the last year's cohort out of pocket. It's not that we're sharing the money. You know, you're still going to have to provide receipts. So anyway, I've made the point, but nobody listened to me, so never mind.
Anyway, that's carried. Thank you very much indeed. Are you happy with the procedures, Leah?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. And thank you for the report. We move on swiftly now to item 15 on our agenda, which is the housing protocol. Yes. Thank you very much for, yeah. No, thank you very much indeed for your support. Thank you. So item 15 is housing protocol for homeless young people, which is in the hands of our Children's Services Director, Sue. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to hand to my colleague, Roy, who's the author of this report, to set out for you the proposals.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Just to clarify that, obviously, I just need to pull this paper out. Just give me 1 second, sorry. Just to clarify that the Children's Services Ofsted inspection in July 2023 highlighted the fact that the council's protocol for housing young people aged 16-17 needed rewriting to strengthen the housing offer and ensure it fully reflected current statutory guidance. So for that purpose, what we've done is created and updated the protocol, and we've got the report in front of you and the appendix attached. What the recommendation is that the members approve this updated protocol for assigning and support the homeless young people's aged 16 and 17. As you can see from the report, that these that just needed updating and to cover the eventuality that we do have homeless young people within the community. What we couldn't, within the report, I highlight that what we couldn't do is obviously have a set of things that we just need to work together to be able to make sure when this time arises that we can support these young people in a bespoke way. But it needed to be written down in a protocol and then updated, so we covered the legal basis of it. So for that reason, put to the members to, if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer, or Sue will be happy to answer.
Thank you very much. Councillor Williams, please.
Yeah, this action has been part of the improvement plan since the very early days after we were judged inadequate by Ofsted, so I'm very pleased to see it's now been revised and published. I think we all hope it's a protocol we never need to use, but please, we have a document that sets out our aims, principles and processes should it ever be required.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sims, please.
If Joel proposed it, I'll second it. If Joel didn't propose it, I'll propose it.
Yeah, happy to propose.
Thank you. Councillor Dean, please.
I won't bother seconding it then, if it's already been done.
Okay, thank you. So we have a proposer and seconder. Could I please have a show of hands for all those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you very much for your paper. Thank you. That concludes our council meeting for today. Thank you very much.